All right, this episode of The Commons, we have the Green Party leader. She may be atheist, but she talks about religion a lot. She brings up Zoom. Now, Zoom has been found to have ties to the Communist Party, which is very odd that she plugs them. But this, her globalist agenda, she has ties with the Clintons, and it's very thing. Watch this; it's very interesting and enlightening to see.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Who she's pushing for, and I think that's why this party hasn't grown.
By recognizing that we're on the traditional territory of the Algonquin people,
Unceded Algonquin territory, and I thank them for hospitality and generosity. Miigwech. I also want to start by saying a large thank you. Merci à tous mes collègues.
Thank you to all my colleagues for giving me the opportunity to speak on this very important day, because it was through unanimous consent. Thank you very much.
It's a lot to me that the Green Party is recognized in this place and allowed to speak as we gather in these entirely unprecedented times. I was moved by the Prime Minister's remarks in reminding us of Vimy. I hadn't planned to speak about Vimy, but April 9th this year, and I noticed my husband very depressed, he's sort of wandering about, and I said, what is, I'm thinking of my grandfather, who was machine gunned on Vimy, April 9th, 1917. His grandfather survived, otherwise I wouldn't be married to my husband, I suppose. But his grandfather, John Owen Wilson, survived, got back to British Columbia, and ended up as Chief Justice of the British Columbia Supreme Court. But the sacrifices of Vimy are not forgotten. The courage and solidarity of previous generations is not forgotten. I've thought in recent times that being a boomer, a 1954 baby, I'm one of the last of a generation that remembers a time of the kind of solidarity and sacrifice, not that I lived through the war or the Depression, but my parents did. And so the family stories become part of who you are. They're in your bones. The notion that government steps up, that government is on your side. And I think through years of neoliberalism, we've gotten this idea that government's kind of in our way, picking our pocket. I'm really relieved that in some ways, this solidarity, the social solidarity that we will have coming out of this pandemic, will allow us to see, yeah, I'm part of my government. My democracy works for me. I hope that can be a lasting lesson. We are here together in a way that I want to acknowledge with deep gratitude. Is Parliament working well even when we're at a distance? I want to thank Prime Minister, the Deputy Prime Minister, and so many different ministers for the openness to hear opposition ideas and concerns. If I could share with Canadians what the last couple of weeks have felt like, working from home nonstop, 24/7. A lot of Canadians wouldn't imagine that every single day, 1:30 BC time, 4:30 in Ottawa, every day including Saturdays and Sundays, we have an opportunity to ask anything. Now, in my mind, this is how the ideas have been working. It's quite true that a lot of the things we wanted weren't in the first bill in C-13. It's quite true that Greens, like others, said it shouldn't be a 10% wage subsidy, it should be 75%. We made that case, and individual examples came forward. It feels to me as though through those daily question and answer sessions, and I know not every single day do all of us get our questions in. Some of us, the member for Carleton does well. I do pretty well. Push *1 and go for it. We do our best to get our questions out there. But in my head, this is how it's been working. We raise a question. We say something like, what happens right now? Bishop McMenemy has just contacted me, and the Anglican Church on Vancouver Island has separate churches, and they all have their own CRA number, but there's only one employer. So the 30% wage, 30% revenue deduction, 30% reduction in revenue compared to some other reference period doesn't work at all in this circumstance. Then today, I look at the most recent version of the bill. Entity is redefined. It now covers that specific weird example of the Anglican diocese and an issue raised to me by Bishop McMenemy. There may have been many other MPs who asked a question that stumped the Finance Canada senior officials that were on the telephone with us every single day. But when I see that in the bill, I think, oh, my question not only was a question, it flagged an issue. And this is what I hear from ministers. Keep sending us the specific concerns that you see. Keep telling us where the gaps are. Because the MPs on the ground right across Canada are the eyes and ears on the front line, able to say, nothing you've got in place right now, with all due respect, is working for small business. I'm terrified that a lot of very small businesses, seasonal businesses, restaurants and so on, are going to go under even with the wage subsidies. But then I pick up today's unanimous consent motion. Well, I saw it before coming here, and I'm very relieved to see that it calls for the government to implement short-term support measures for small and medium-sized enterprises to be partially refundable, primary objective, maintaining jobs, reducing the debt related to fixed costs. That's what I keep hearing from small business. They can't afford to pay the rent. The wage subsidy doesn't help them. So what I'm seeing here is not to be just a Pollyanna about our circumstances. But I do want to say that it means a lot to me that when we've come forward as individual MPs, opposition and Liberal, and said, look, what's happening doesn't work. There's too many people, students, people in the gig economy. They're not covered by CERB. What are we going to do? Today's unanimous consent motion says we implement measures without delay. I think without delay would actually meet what the member for Burnaby South said, and right now today we say everybody applies. But that language suggests not that the government is saying, we've gotten this perfect, go away. What I hear from minister after minister is, we're learning. We're working as hard as we can. I want to say that I do know that the Minister of Global Affairs and his parliamentary secretary have been available to me pretty much 24/7 for about the 50 or so constituents that I've so far worked to help get home. And I've still got about a dozen that I'm working on. And the parliamentary secretary knows well that I have someone stranded in Vanuatu. But there's a real sense of all hands on deck. And I want Canadians to know that. I want them to know that a spirit of nonpartisanship, of we are Team Canada, we're all in it together. Nothing exemplifies that for me more than the newfound best friend relationship between the Premier of Ontario and the Deputy Prime Minister. I think this shows stepping up to a circumstance where we're all at risk. We're thinking about being surrounded by death. We're thinking about wearing our masks. I've got Lysol wipes here below my desk. We are constantly vigilant. But we're also working together because we're Canadians. This must not be a moment that divides us. We must remember this and work differently in future. Yes, I want to press for guaranteed livable income. We will keep doing that. Yes, I want to press that we will, in this place and before too long, see new climate targets that meet the imperative of a looming disaster far greater than COVID-19. Threatens to kill more people and wipe out civilization. It can't be postponed. But right now, what I want to say is a deep thank you for the spirit of collaboration. The Prime Minister spoke of the fact that this time, of course, is a season of many religious observances. It is Passover. Happy Passover to my Jewish friends and family. It is also coming up soon to Vaiseki. And within a few weeks, it'll be Ramadan to my Islamic friends, a period of fasting and reflection. I'm just finishing Lent, a period of fasting and reflection. And it speaks to the unprecedented nature of the crisis that we're in, that as far as I've been able to determine through research from home and looking through every bit of constitutional and parliamentary history I can find, the Parliament of Canada has never before sat on Easter Saturday. Good Friday, particularly in previous generations, was held sacred. The idea of meeting on Easter weekend would have been impossible to imagine. But here we are. And why? In about, looking at the clock, I think, in about 10 hours, it will be dawn in Jerusalem. And the first morning light of that sunrise will strike the walls of the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. It's built on the spot where we are told the original cave was, in which the body of Jesus Christ was wrapped and placed in the tomb, the rock rolled in front of it, and that approximately 10 hours from now at dawn will be that remembrance of our stories, of our tradition, our faith, the most significant day, the most profound and important day of a Christian calendar, the resurrection of Christ, that the stone was rolled back, and that those who loved him, Mary and others, came and thought the body had been stolen, and the angels came to them, and then Jesus, disguised as a gardener, came to them and said, "No, he is risen." Now, in this time when we are surrounded by death, and we are worried about our mortality, and those of the people we love, we can think of the things that are most important. And after this is over, we'll recognize, yes, we can survive. We can break the bonds of death. We can have faith in each other. We can invest ourselves in love for each other and our communities. We can remember what really matters. And right now, as I watch my grandkids on Zoom family chats, what would I give for a hug? I would love to think about our lives as transformed by this in ways that are profound, as we recognize that for the first time in my life, governments all around the world have decided without a hesitation, life is more important than money. We have deliberately and voluntarily shut down our economies to save lives. We have deliberately and voluntarily created for ourselves as lawmakers and as policymakers the challenge of an economic recovery because we didn't hesitate to know that saving life is more important than money. And when this is all over, and please God, it's over with a minimum loss of life in Canada and all around the world, particularly worried for those countries that lack basic health care. We mustn't forget our obligations to the poorest of the poor, just as we don't forget Indigenous peoples in Canada, just as we don't forget those who are most marginalized, homeless. But when we get through this together, let's remember.
No, she raised a lot of points. I was just saying earlier is that a lot of just throwing out here and throwing out there, very political speak, and that's like the last stage. We need a populist leader in the Green Party. Leave your comments down below, like, subscribe,